This is the tutorial on how to create your logo for your ride design. I'm working on gravit.io, and as you can see, I have already laid out my text for my logo using colors that I created on a coolors.co palette. To grab the color hex code, I just click on the name of the color, hit Control C on my keyboard, and then come back here and highlight the text that I want to change, click the color button, and paste in my hex code to change it and hit Enter. To get the letters to hook into each other like this, I created them in separate text boxes by clicking like this, typing one letter, editing the size that I wanted it at, and then continuing on. Set the font to one that I thought would be really a good fit for the theme of my ride. So I went through and found a font that I liked for that. Now that this is the way I want it, I'm going to select it all and right click and hit Group Selection. That'll keep it so that if I move it around, everything stays together. Now I'm going to draw some tentacles for the Cthulhu myth. Using the pen tool, I'm going to click and start drawing the general shape of where I want the tentacles to be. I can always change this later. You can see that this is a very zigzaggy line. It has hard edges, but we're going to change those to round them out after I finish clicking through and drawing it. And I just connected it back to the starting point. To smooth out those edges, I'm going to go up to the pointer tool, which is my selection tool, and click the drop down there to the sub-select tool. That will let me select each anchor point, double click it, and convert it from being a straight joint to being a mirrored joint or a disconnected joint or an asymmetric joint. What that's doing is affecting how these handles behave. So the handles are these little lines that come off of the anchor point. If I pull this out or in, or I tilt it, it changes the nature of the line, changes the direction of the line from that point. I just want this to be a nice smooth curve, so I'm going to go with a mirrored joint and let it curve the thing out. But I'm not going to change the tip of the tentacle into a mirrored joint because I want that to stay pointy, and same thing for the base. Now that I have the shape roughly how I want it, I can go back to my Coolors palette and grab this color for the fill of the design. I'm going to add some shading on the bottom of the tentacle to show that it's curving over. So I'm going back to my pen tool and I'm going to start clicking a new path. Oops, pen tool, click a new path, there we go. And this is where it's going to curve over. And again, it doesn't matter if it's perfect right now because I can edit it in a minute once I get it in place. Now I can go back to my direct select tool, my sub select tool, and change those points. And I actually just want to go right now and quickly fill that shape with the selection tool, pointer tool. There it is. And I want to fill it by using the eyedropper tool here to grab that color and then just make it lighter. And I see that that shape I just made is behind my original one, so I'm going to right click it and press Arrange, Bring to Front. Arrange, Bring to Front. There it is. There it is. Now it looks like the underside of the tentacle is lighter. So going back to the direct selection tool, or the sub select tool they call it here, I can start converting my anchor points to be rounded. I know that this is a slow process, but it's really the most effective way to make logos. If I want to change the border around this, by the way, I can make it thicker, thinner by changing this, or I could remove it entirely if I take that thickness down to 0 or hit the delete button there. And if I decide I want to add it back in, I can just hit the plus sign there and it comes back. Although it does come back as a black color, I want it to be that dark green that we set originally. So I'm just going to grab that from here. I'm going to make some tentacle shapes, so I'm using the shape tool up here to draw an ellipse. And I'm going to just click and drag that and rotate it. to the position I want it in. And then I can change the color to be that, make it a little lighter. That looks good to me. And then I'm going to add an effect down here. I'll just add an inner shadow effect to make it look a little more 3D. Looks okay. I'm going to hit Control C to copy it and Control V to paste. Now I have two of them, and I'll keep doing that down the row, rotating them to make them fit the curve of the tentacle. For this last little piece that's overlapping here, I can use the knife tool to just slice right through it, and then it's going to turn it into two pieces like that. Then I can use my select tool to delete the bottom piece here, and now it's cut. This is a quick reminder to every now and then save your work. File, save. It's that simple. Just make sure you're saving. And I just went ahead and added some inner shadows to create a highlight here and a shadow on this piece. And I did that down here where it says inner shadow, just added that and played around with the placement of it. I'm going to go back to what I had before because I liked that. Now that this is all done, what I'm going to do is move the text out of the way temporarily, select all of these by clicking and dragging with the selection tool, and I'm going to right click and group the selection. So this is now all chunked together. I can move it as one object. I'm going to hit Control C, Control V. Now I have a second one, and then I'm going to hit Transform and flip horizontal. So now I have a second one going the other way. Ooh, Tentacle City. Okay. We're going to transform that by scaling it down, so clicking and dragging to make it smaller. If I want to keep the proportions exactly the same, I can hold Shift while I do that. And I'm going to right-click that and arrange it and send to back, so it will be behind the first one. Move my text back into place. Now I've got something going on. To give a little more depth and interest to the text, I clicked more and added an overlay, which I'm going to delete this second one that I just did. And it is a linear gradient. So that just darkens in like a fade the text to give it a little more depth. And finally, I'm going to add an oval behind to create a base for all of this. And I'm going to put a wood texture on that. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going back to my shapes and grabbing an ellipse tool again, clicking and dragging to about the size I want, and right click, arrange, send to back. So now it's behind everything, but right now it's gray. That's not what I need. So we're going to change that. I'm going to my fill here. And when I click here for the color, you can see that there are also some options up here to fill with a gradient, noise, background, texture, all these options. So let me show you what I'm going to do. When I click texture fill, it has this default weird checkerboard thing. And I'm going to instead click choose image, and that'll take me to where I can open up an image from my desktop. And I'm going to find a royalty-free public domain wood texture image based on that lesson that we did on copyright. So I went over to Wikimedia Commons where there are public domain and Creative Commons images hosted. It's commons.wikimedia.org, and I searched for the words wood texture to see if I could find some wood texture that I found interesting, useful for my design. When I find something I like, I'm going to copy it and save it to my computer to use in the background of the oval. I'm going to try out this beech wood texture image, so I'm going to right-click it, save image as, and then put it in my folder with all my other materials for this project so that I don't lose it or forget where it is, and hit save. Back in the designer, I hit choose image. Now I can go to that folder where I have it and upload that. It is deeply buried in the folder. Roller coasters, there it is. All right, now I have a wood texture, and I'm going to keep playing around with this until it looks exactly right. I wasn't loving the way that the wood sign thing was working out, so I'm trying like a water splash background instead. I just drew a shape with the pen tool and converted all of the anchor points to be mirrored. Now I'm going to fill it with blue to start. Actually, I'm going to fill it with a gradient, linear gradient of blue to dark blue, just to start off with. And I'm going to tip that this way. And then I'm going to send this to the background. Yeah, that's a better start. We'll tweak around with that for, play around with that for a minute. Around a little, made a little droplet, which I'm going to copy, Control C, and paste, Control V, and I can right click this and transform it, flip horizontal, move it over here, Control V, and do that a few more times. I'm going to rotate this one a little bit so it's going a different direction, and I can even stretch it out or make it a different shape. Etc. If I double click that shape, I can also use the individual anchor points to change it and stretch it, squish it, modify it, move it around, make different versions of it. I changed up some of the colors, actually simplified some of them to make the image pop a little bit more. And I'm not quite satisfied with it yet, but it's good enough to download for now. So if I was finally done, what I would do is save it one last time and then hit export. And I want to download it two different ways. Once as a SVG, scalable vector graphics, and hit save file, okay. And then I also want to export it as a PNG. The difference is that PNG is a raster file. It is a grid of pixels. So if you make it bigger or smaller, it might change the quality of it. Whereas SVG is infinitely scalable, kind of like how a letter on a font is. It is a vector file, so it can be made bigger or smaller with no change in quality. However, it's not as universally compatible with other image editing software as a PNG or a JPEG would be. And I can see if I go to my downloads and hit open containing folder, it is right there, and I can open that. It shows up. I have it on my desktop. I can use it in any other design that I want for this project. As always, when you're done with a project, you are going to turn it in for grading on Echo by hitting the blue plus sign and clicking attach a file and selecting it from your desktop, then submitting it.